The Maskelynes were a magic family.
The mysterious and magnificent Maskelyne family. Their illusions are still being performed today.
I think it's impossible to calculate the importance that had on magic.
The Maskelynes were magic's great designers, builders, and performers, from levitations to mechanical men known as automatons.
Many of the great effects come from the Maskelynes.
From razor blade eating to illusions that caused the Suez Canal to disappear.
We call it the golden age of magic.
The Maskelynes are still with us. The levitation illusion is one of the staples of modern magic. The concept is so simple and so appealing that it doesn't need words, just an audience to sit and watch and wonder. The notion of man recreating himself out of machine parts is centuries old. In the Victorian era, small mechanized figures that could play chess and cards seemed to fulfill the prophecy. The notion of being able to transform oneself, to literally be placed in a cocoon and emerge in another form, is a concept as old as recorded time. And yet, in the 1880s, audiences were able to see this every night. The perfection of these illusions, the point at which they went from fantasy to reality, the point at which they became part of the magician's trunk of illusions, rests with one family. The Maskelynes. To the general public, their name is largely unknown, but to the magic community, they were titans. Their specialty was the mechanics of magic, the creation of new effects and illusions. This standard was set by the family's founder, the remarkable John Neville Maskelyne. The Victorian era, a time of propriety, yes, but also a time of growth and expansion. Technological innovation was changing the way people lived and the way they worked. And in that time, in the City of London, was a theater dedicated to magic. And presiding over that theater was a magician named John Neville Maskelyne. Magicians today revere him.
Well, John Neville Maskelyne, an Egyptian hall, I think it's impossible to calculate the importance that had on magic.
The mascot moth, for instance, was one of the great illusions.
Maskelyne's greatest contribution to magic by far were the levitations that he introduced.
The Will and the Witch illusion is one of the classic ones of magic.
They developed illusions that we're still kind of catching up to today.
The theater is called Egyptian Hall, and it's the setting of the story of the Maskelyne Dynasty. In the 19th century, the 300-seat theater became one of the few venues devoted solely to magic. And our main protagonist, John Neville Maskelyne, would create almost all of his astonishing technical marvels out of this one venue. A British watchmaker by trade, he was fascinated by magic at an early age. At 25, he started performing, working with close friend and cabinet maker, George Alfred Cooke, who later became his chief builder and backstage designer. Their careers began in 1865, when the two men caught a London performance of the Davenport Brothers. The Davenport brothers were astounding audiences with their spirit cabinet illusion, a paranormal act which involved the brothers being tied up by members of the audience and placed inside a cabinet.
They would be tied together in this cabinet, the curtain would be pulled, and then all sorts of manifestations would mysteriously come from the cabinet. Banjos would be strummed, tambourines would go flying, their shirts would come off. It was a great trick, it was a great illusion.
The Davenport brothers were not above suggesting that special powers might be responsible for the illusion. Something of a skeptic, Maskelyne was curious about their outrageous claims. On March 7, 1865, Maskelyne was part of the audience at a Davenport show.
At one point, Maskelyne was called to the stage as an audience volunteer to examine the trick while it was going on, to be part of the committee that looked around the cabinet. The story goes, and I believe it to be a true story, is that the curtain at one point sort of bellowed out, and Maskelyne got a quick look inside the Davenport's cabinet, and he realized they had used a fake rope tie.
The brothers obviously did not have special powers. Maskelyne decided to debunk their supernatural claims by building his own spirit cabinet and incorporating the same illusion into his own act. This revealing duplication gave Maskelyne his first big publicity.
The Davenport brothers were rage of the age when they were touring the world, and Maskelyne got a lot of press out of so-called duplicating or exposing the methods they were using.
As a result of this success, Maskelyne and Cook soon became a strong enough act that they opened at London's Egyptian Hall in 1873. Originally booked for 3 months, they would stay for 31 years.
The Masculynes had a perfect place to work and play. I mean, they could build all day long and try out all their experiments, and they present them to their audience at night.
It was not only the showplace for magicians, for great magicians, but it was a laboratory for great magicians. It brought them to London, and it allowed them to flourish, it allowed them to experiment. It put different types of magic in front of an audience.
Maskelyne quickly grew into the role of magician-designer, but during this exuberant period, his love of mechanics was not limited to magic. The new headliner, general manager, designer, and publicist of Egyptian Hall also found time to invent an early typewriter, a theater money changer, and a pay toilet lock. This age of ingenuity and industry suited Maskelyne and Cook perfectly.
I think we still don't know today what part Cook played in the proceedings. He certainly worked as an assistant and was probably a very important assistant. He was a partner of Maskelyne in their early shows when they were working independently, and I think Maskelyne kept him on as a partner in that sense.
But while Cook was content to exist in the wings, there was another power at Egyptian Hall who took center stage. Maskelyne found another partner in the charismatic magician and designer, David Devant. Magicians agree it is impossible to retell the story of Maskelyne or Egyptian Hall without discussing David Devant.
Well, David Devant is remembered today, I think, as England's greatest magician, and I think might be more representative to say one of the greatest magicians of the world, period. He was a remarkable person. He was a remarkable all-around magician. One of the last all-around magicians. He was an entrepreneur, he was an impresario, he was a designer, he was a sleight-of-hand artist, he was a very talented writer, inventor. And what's great about Devant is also the warmth with which he's remembered by audiences. He was kind to people. He treated the audience with respect. He was inviting to children. It was an elegant, sophisticated approach, filled with warmth and humor, and the magic was absolutely sensational.
What David Devant introduced to the Maskelyne show and in large measure to magic was the notion of the sort of jovial comedy performer. There were posters that Devant produced with people, just pictures of the audience just laughing.
Maskelyne was, by all accounts, an interesting performer to watch, but basically he was exhibiting his devices, he was exhibiting his creations. And Devant was kind of weaving the spell. He really brought it to a new audience and made it a theatrical showplace that it hadn't been before.
David Devant he came up with so many wonderful ideas that are still used today. Something called the mascot moth that he and Maskelyne kind of worked on together, but was basically a David Devant idea.
The illusion in which the magician makes his assistant vanish into thin air astonished Edwardian audiences and had an enduring impact. Today, Las Vegas superstar Lance Burton pays homage to the Maskelyne era and performs a variation on the original mascot moth.
David Devant came up with many, many things that are still used today. And we're always trying to find out how he did certain things.
Maskelyne and Devant would work together for 22 years, but in the early years, the 1860s, it was Maskelyne who introduced the illusions. Specifically, one that was to change the rules of magic and change the magician's repertoire for all time. The illusion is called the levitation. Since its introduction, every magician has put their own spin on it, but the basic premise and method of execution belongs with John Neville Maskelyne.
Maskelyne introduced the levitation, which is very much akin to the popular modern-day levitation, in which a woman, generally a woman assistant, floats above the stage, a hoop can be passed over her, and it's truly a remarkable trick.
But while the levitation thrilled Victorian audiences, Maskelyne wanted to go further. He wanted to do more with the illusion. In 1876, he designed a way to do just that.
Maskelyne would walk to the end of the stage and simply standing there, just fly.
He also introduced a 22-inch tall mechanical figure named Psycho, whose appearance caused nothing short of mayhem. John Neville Maskelyne's innovation introduced audiences at Egyptian Hall to spirit cabinets and levitations, but nothing would match what followed.
Probably his greatest introduction would be automatons.
In 1875, Victorian audiences would be astounded by Maskelyne's first automaton. His name was Psycho.
Generally speaking, an automaton is a mechanical figure that emulates life, human form or animal, birds, whatever.
The notion of a card-playing automaton was first suggested to Maskelyne by an English farmer named John Algernon Clark. Maskelyne worked for 2 years on the project, and in 1875 his design was brought to life. When Maskelyne presented him on stage at the Hall, it caused an immediate sensation.
You can see now what an amazing fascination that was for an audience. In the Victorian age, when machinery was glorified, when machinery, for the first time, was appearing to give the answers to problems, when it was making life easier, when the machine itself was a beautiful thing. It was made in brass and wheels, and it was an elegant object.
Certainly for an era on the edge of efficiency before the popular use of electricity in automobiles, Psycho would be astonishing.
It was truly a miraculous trick. Some truly great magic minds took a look at Psycho and tried to figure out what its workings were, including one magician who probed it with a compass, a very strong magnetic compass, and thought he had figured out the secret, but he was completely off.
Today, magic designer and builder John Gahn can give us a glimpse into the wonders of the past. He restored magician Harry Keller's version of Maskelyne Psycho and can demonstrate the performance of a Victorian automaton.
What is the answer to 5 times 5, please? He's very fast. He's thinking. And I believe, yes, he's picked a 2. One more card, Psycho. And the 5, 25. Very good.
Maskelyne would go on and create further automata, notably Zoe, an automaton that drew pictures of celebrities. In 1876, Maskelyne then premiered The Levitation Extraordinary.
It was a primitive illusion by today's standards, but at the time, it was a sensation. Maskelyne would walk to the end of the stage and simply standing there, just fly. He would take off and float around the upper reaches of the theater. Audiences could see his body pass around the balconies and zoom around like a bird. I think today's audiences would be unlikely to be fooled by the particular optical effects that Maskelyne chose to use for that effect, but at the time, it was something.
Maskelyne was able to create this effect by virtue of the fact that he was always on the cutting edge of innovation. He had discovered and utilized one of the latest pieces of technology, the magic lantern, an early version of the slide projector. The use of this kind of cutting-edge technology in creating the levitation extraordinary points up Maskelyne's genius, an ability to tap into man's age-old fantasies, desires, and wants, using the latest in mechanical means. In 1886, another member of the Maskelyne family appeared at Egyptian Hall. The eldest son, Neville Maskelyne, performed at the theater for the balance of the incredible run until 1905. Maskelyne's younger son, Archie, appeared in 1904.
The Maskelynes were a magic family. There were a number of magic families at that time. I think the family structure gave way or lended itself to magic being passed on. Magic was largely an apprenticed art. It was an art of secrets, and if you're not going to trust your secrets to your family, it seems unlikely that you trust it to an outsider.
Film was the next big fad, and the Maskelynes jumped right in. Like his contemporaries, the Lumiere brothers, Neville began experimenting with the new medium in the last years of the century. At the same time, magicians like George Méliès were already making names for themselves by mixing magic with the new medium. The golden age of magic was a mix of gentility and ingenuity, innovation and exuberance. Most citizens believed that a man might very well be able to go around the world in 80 days, or at least cross the ocean in 5, or even fly. That world disappeared in 1914. World War I would shatter it forever, and within the Maskelyne Dynasty, the next 10 years carried many losses. John Neville Maskelyne was on stage doing a plate spinning routine on May 2nd, 1917, when he dropped 2 plates. He complained of ill health. The performance was his last. He would die less than 1 month later. Archie, the youngest, died on September 26, 1920. Neville died suddenly on September 21, 1924. It was not, however, the end of the fabulous Maskelyne dynasty. Noel, Mary, and Clive were all to have successful careers in magic. And then there was Jasper, who in addition to performing magic on stage became a noted film actor. Here he's seen doing his remarkable razor blade eating routine. At the beginning of World War II, Jasper Maskelyne enlisted in the military. The problem was that the military didn't know what to do with a magician in their midst.
He eventually wound up using his magic talents to help the war effort. At the beginning, this was done in a very minor way. He was asked to come up with camouflage paint, which he actually mixed from camel manure and painted tanks in the North African campaign. But ultimately, Maskelyne wound up playing a critical role in the battle against the Nazis in North Africa. He performed some of the largest illusions of all time. Jasper Maskelyne made the Suez Canal disappear.
He used a simple optical effect by projecting rotating beams of light into the sky. The result was a disorienting spray of light that prevented enemy bombers from locating the canal.
The sad thing is, although he performed these great illusions, very few people will ever know about them because they were all done under a cloak of secrecy.
After the war, Jasper performed under the banner Maskelyne and Devant Presents. Working with his family once again, he sold the show shortly afterwards and represents the last performing Maskelyne. In 1973, with his death, the curtain was brought down.
The innovations from Egyptian Hall we're still using today, the forms of entertainment, the focus on spiritual effects, which was an important early part of their performances, the mechanical magic that developed in terms of psycho, the dramatic magic, the playlets, the mascot moth, the work of David Devant. These were really only possible because there was this laboratory that brought an audience year after year after year. And it was a petri dish for magic, and it grew beautiful things and fantastic performers.